Yes, this is John Wilson from Flint Talk Radio, and today I have a distinct pleasure of sitting down and talking with Scott Boman. Scott Boman was a Libertarian candidate for the senator for Michigan. Correct, Scott?
Correct.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
Pretty good. And anyway, Scott is like just because he's not in office doesn't mean he's out of politics, and he's right now trying to draw attention to the NDAA, which is North American Defense Authorization Act. Do I have that correct?
I read it as National Defense.
National Defense, yeah, National.
Fiscal year 2012.
Yeah. Now there's other ones.
Distinguished from the more recent one, the National Defense Authorization Act of fiscal year 2013, which doesn't have the offending provisions in it.
Now it's like this NDAA, the way of 2012, the one more the offensive one, the one we're discussing. It's appalling. I mean, there's other epitaphs I can put on top of it, but I'm trying to retain some kind of professionalism. And we have a senator named Carl Levin for the state of Michigan who was the co-author of this monstrosity. And it went largely unnoticed by the press and the ACLU and a whole set of, we'll get into that. Anyway, briefly, you have some papers there that could talk about what this actually encompasses, what this actually means to the American citizen potentially?
Okay, yeah. Well, the amendment, which was co-authored by John McCain and Carl Levin, and remained only slightly modified when it went through the various processes between the two houses of Congress. What it does is it allows for the military to arrest people, including on American soil, and detain them indefinitely. Actually, it doesn't say indefinite. It says till the end of hostilities, which when you have something as nebulously defined as the war on terror is indefinite. Because obviously, I mean, there's no particular named enemy or no particular named country. So as long as there's somebody using guerrilla tactics as a method of expressing political dissent, then you're going to always have a war on terror. So that being said, what that does then is they can basically hold indefinitely, and how this deviates then from our both, whether it's you think in terms of common law or just civil rights in terms of constitutional law. What we're taught how it deviates is there is no trial, there is no due process, there isn't habeas corpus, which predates the existence of this country. There isn't any implied right to have a defense attorney, to have to be able to have people know that you are even on trial, to any of this. And there are a lot of these types of deviations from civil justice that already existed in some form or another in the Patriot Act. But what this does is it kind of brings it all together and firms it up as a matter of accepted law rather than kind of an ad hoc list of violations of our rights. And in fact, the way I just described it is how Debbie Stabenow describes it when she defends her yes vote on it. Is to say, oh, well, before we had all these ad hoc provisions, but now we've codified it into law, and that's much better. Like, oh, no, it's not. Now you got a solidly expressed law that, I'm trying to think of the correct word here, that across the board takes away our fundamental rights that are promised under the Constitution.
I mean, yeah, I mean, and the thing is, this didn't even get a play in the media. I mean, when the Patriot Act bill was first being formulated right after 9/11, the press was all over that. Right. And they're all over that. But now, because they say the press is thinking, well, these Democrats are our buddies. They show up for our meetings and they like us. We don't have to fear them much. But there was a big bad Republicans that we had to worry before. And I think, the people are saying, well, you can't get into partisan politics. It's beyond that. I agree. But partisan politics does play a role in this, I think, because there is no outrage. The ACLU is not even, they're not even outraged by this. And we were talking about this a couple of days ago, and you worked with the ACLU of Detroit, if I remember the story correctly. And you saw several of the events that the ACLU of Detroit hosted. if this man's such a
Right.
stalwart
Well,
defender,
I was never on their board, but I was an active
right?
member, and I attended lots of events at one time, and occasionally would attend as a member, sit in on their board meetings a couple times. So yeah, I had a close relationship with them, and yeah, Carl Levin was respected. And now, of course, the ACLU is strongly. I mean, they do. In all due recognition to them, they do put out um, emails and alerts about this, and have come out against it, against the detainee provisions. However, they have not come out against the people who have made it the law, including one of its chief authors, Carl Levin. So there is kind of a bit of hypocrisy here. On the one hand, they have to concede that it's evil and say it's evil and identify it as such. And on the other hand, not being too negative about the person who put it in the law. And I mean, it's very ironic. Of course, I mean, you can't retroactively say they were being too nice to him back before he did it. But I'm just saying it's kind of like, it's almost like they feel like, well, if one of us do it, it's kind of okay. Because, he's been spoke at our events, and he's sort of like one of us because he's, does all these things. He must be a civil libertarian. Apparently he just slipped this time. But it's just too far severe to be a slip. And it's not just a vote. He's a co-author. That means him and John McCain, at least on the surface, they say they co-authored it. Now, of course, I mean, one could argue that maybe they had a ghostwriter, and since they're the actual members of the Senate, they're the ones who could say, well, here, this is our amendment. But, so that makes him especially culpable, which is why I, at the same time that I was running a U.S. Senate campaign against Debbie Stabenow, I simultaneously jump-started a recall Carl Levin effort, just because I wanted to, make it clear that, I mean, he's exceptional in being one of the two authors. And it's not, people go, well, yeah, but he represents Michigan, blah, blah, blah. But the thing is, well, only Michiganders can recall him. People from other states can't recall him. And people, what about John McCain? He's a Republican. You're just picking on Democrats. Well, yeah, but let John McCain's people recall John McCain. We can't do that for them.
That point exactly. It's lost on people. I mean, when I say something about Carl Levin, they say, "Yeah, but so and so did this." I went, "Yeah, but Levin's our embarrassment. We can remove this embarrassment from office."
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but, what's the thing? And the only thing it comes down to is there's basically fearful that the gravy train is going to stop if this guy's out of office, because a lot of people are benefiting from him being in office. He's bringing home the bacon to these people. Yeah, they're sacrificing the U.S. Constitution in the process, and these morons either don't care or they are oblivious, or I basically think they don't really care because they're getting something out of it. The rest of us, hey, guess what? Tough what, whatever. I mean, I'm outraged. I mean, the lack of response to me is just appalling. I mean, there's no response.
It is partisan, like you were saying earlier about how when George Bush was the president and laws of a similar nature, but actually less severe and less encompassing, were passed, that yeah, he was treated as if he was evil. I mean, people would mock him up. I mean, they put little, Charlie Chaplin mustaches on him and stuff. And the same with the war in Iraq, for instance, where there people were, we're characterizing him as, the mass murderer who's responsible for all the deaths of these Iraqis. And then when President Obama gets in, and of course we have the detainees at Gitmo, and President Obama gets in, and he's supposedly going to change all that, and does not. Well, okay, yeah, supposedly the war in Iraq's over, but there's this huge presence in the form of an embassy that's really a base, and things like that. And obviously we are still just kind of well past our original mission in Afghanistan, and it's become an ongoing, protracted conflict there. So these things that it was like people act in shock. I remember when John McCain was debating Barack Obama back in 2000, they were shocked at the notion when John McCain was like, well, I don't think we should have any particular date to get out. Obama's like, oh, yeah, I'm going to get them out as soon as I can. I'm going to do it responsibly, but I'm going to get them out as soon as I can. And, of course, I guess as soon as he can isn't any time soon. So it is totally partisan. And in fact, the biggest anti-war protest I was at was before the election in 2008, maybe about a year before. I think it was in 2007, in other words. And it was sponsored by a group that I previously never heard of called MoveOn.org. And I was like, oh, this is a cool group. And, we all protested the war. And I thought that's exactly what MoveOn.org was about. Well, I got on their mailing list and everything. And over time, I started getting all this other crap from them. I'm like, guys, let's stick to the main focus. We're talking about ending the war, ending foreign intervention. And, it became quite clear to me eventually that, oh, I get it. This is just a front group for Barack Obama.
And that's where they skirted around the campaign finance reform bills and everything. I mean, laws. That's how they did all this stuff. Acorn was part and parcel of his effort. All these places were, and nobody, it was under the radar, but it was kind of an open secret in many ways. If you're in the know politically, you started seeing a trend. You started looking. You saw the smoke. Then you saw where the fire was coming from, and that's all connected. And nobody called foul on this. Nobody called foul on this. I mean,
yeah. Now, of course, we might say, well, the media, but what about the media? And it should also, it's become clear to me over practically more than half of my life at this point. What has become very clear to me is the main. Of course, I mean, the media is very broad. Your media, I have friends who are media, who have a radio show, or so on. But the point is, when I'm talking now, we're talking about the so-called mainstream media. And we're talking about, MSNBC, ABC, CBS, and even Fox, CNN. These people are. I mean, they're all basically part of the same club. And yet, Fox tends to act a little more dissenting, but even they kind of have limits that they're not going to pass, effectively holding up the two-party system. With a few, jewels of exception, like, you got John Stossel and Napolitano. But if you just look at the news broadcast, and I especially think the core of what I'd characterize as mainstream media would be like ABC, NBC, and CBS News that comes on, around the dinner hour. Those programs, it's all the same. You could channel surf between them, and you'll get the same thing on all of them. And yeah, they build up they have an agenda, and they will build up in sync all three particular issues all together. And people are like, oh, that's no conspiracy. I mean, this is the reason they're all focusing on the same thing is because that's what's happening. Well, there's a lot of things happening. They're just picking on a very narrow sliver of what's happening, and they're all picking the same sliver. That's what's happening.
Well,
they're setting an agenda, and that agenda does not include the notion that neither of the major parties is somehow complicit.
It's like a lot. I go out to people and I talk to people about the media's complicity in this, stuff. They, like you're just alluding to, they actually just pick and choose, cherry pick the things they want to cover, and they got dismissive of that when I say this is not good. And I went, look, the framers of the Constitution, the people who founded this country. As soon as you say that, their eyes started glazing over. Like you're talking about a dead religion, and they're a bunch of dead white guys. But the thing is, the only way the system they had envisioned or had idea for could work if they had people outside of government being critical of government. That's supposed to have been the press. But now, they're all in it together. And they conspire together. They cover, these guys say, the politicians, hey guys, don't cover this is too embarrassing. Sure, guy, well, hey, we'll meet up at the bar, the brew's on me. I mean, basically there is nobody questioning what these people are up to, and that's what the role of the press is supposed to be. That's why we were supposed to have a free press. It wasn't so we can hear what next was going on with Justin Bieber and all these morons out there. It was because we wanted to unearth what was going on with the people running the country. And of course,
they're only doing that when it's like one faction. Like, yeah, sure, if a Democratic candidate that's well known sits there and says, starts blasting Bush or one of his front groups, blasting some Republicans for something they're doing, or the Republicans start blasting some Democrat for something he's doing. That'll make it in there. If it's some influential, groups that happen to be getting a lot of coverage from time to time, they'll get in there. But yeah, but as far as the issue itself, as far as the reporters just getting in there and saying, your government has just basically put you under de facto martial law, they won't come out and do that.
I mean,
they're part of the problem.
yeah, I mean, it's like this. I mean, I use the analogy of having they always talk about firearms and how we got to be responsible gun owners, and I'm a gun owner, I'm a gun rights activist and all this. Well, this exactly, you let these guys create a weapon. Now, maybe these guys out there who did this, who passed for it, who voted for it, don't have intention of using it or abusing it. But you don't create something like this in a republic with the laws we're supposed to have, and then leave it there for down the road for somebody else to pick up and utilize against anyone who wants to criticize them. And that's what it possibly can do, because let's face it, there is no specific definitions in this of what is considered a hostile person or anything else, from my understanding of it.
Yeah, they have a phrase like belligerent or people who commit a belligerent act. And in fact, on my campaign website, I ended up putting a little banner on there. It said, "This website is a belligerent act," with a link to a website pertaining to the indefinite detentions. When he signed it, he said he didn't intend to use it. Now, so it leaves me wondering, so in other words, he feels like he shouldn't be using these powers, but he definitely wants somebody, he knows not whom, to use those powers in the future. I mean, that's pretty strange.
Well, yeah, I mean, another thing is too.
Unless, of course, one's going to think that somehow he's confident that he knows something about who's going to be president in the future. It's just a very strange thing for him to say.
Yeah, and you don't want people to go off too much with the possibilities of the conspiracies, thinking like that could. But I mean, then that's what they want. They want you to consider all the possibilities when the actual blatant thing that they're doing is horrific enough. I mean, it really is. I mean, this is like probably. I mean, we weren't alive during the time of the Civil War, but Lincoln suspended the right of habeas corpus. He imprisoned people for the entire duration. A lot of people there were probably a lot of innocent people who were just caught up in that, who did suffer from it. We should have learned from mistakes. If we can't bring charges to these people or anything else, they should be released. We don't want what they call extreme rendition or whatever this going on to U.S. citizens. And another thing is, too, I have a problem with extending...
And that started even before that started maybe like near the end of Clinton.
Right. Oh, yeah, I mean, this stuff... Oh, yeah, I mean, it's been... I mean... I remember this. This is appalling, too. I remember this quote right from Nadine Strossen. She was the head of the one of the bigwigs of the ACLU back at that time. After the Clinton administration wrapped up, she said there was no more abuse of administration to civil liberties than the Clinton administration. Of course, that was before 9/11 and then the succeeding, insanity going on. But this was, and here Clinton was considered the darling. He was supposed to be another constitutional scholar, just like Obama is supposed to be a constitutional scholar. That as soon as you raise objections to, especially on the left, if you say, "Well, this is not constitutional," he or she is a constitutional scholar. Yeah, he studied the Constitution, but does they understand it? Do they understand the implications of what they're doing? Or if they do, then why are they doing it? If they're so the galling part about it is they are sworn to protect and defend the Constitution. This obviously just shows right now he's not diligent. Clinton isn't. Obama's not, in that. I mean, that right there is a glaring example of his negligence or his design.
One is going to call him a constitutional scholar, and I must concede that it's unlikely someone would make it to the office of president without actually knowing what it says there. And the same goes for Supreme Court, to that matter. The fact that they are acting so blatantly to undermine it that. There's some things one does not have to be a scholar to understand. And, I mean, when some things are in very plain English, I mean, you got the Constitution isn't much longer than a good magazine article. When some things are quite easy to understand and someone's blatantly acting contrary to it, I mean, the only thing you can conclude is that, maybe they did study it. Maybe he is a scholar of it and understands it very deeply for the purpose of undermining it. Because sometimes to maybe destroy something, to defeat your enemy, you must understand your enemy. And so one either has to conclude that he's, one, ignorant, which I find less probable, than two, evil. In other words, wishing to actually, or maybe he thinks he's good, but sees the Constitution as evil, but definitely opposed to the core of the Constitution, either way you look at it, and dead set on defeating these basic principles. And and trying to undermine it by any means necessary. And that may, in fact, really be what we're looking at there. And I wouldn't just include the president, who is free, a favorite of conservatives to rip on, but I'd include maybe the entire, or at least most of the Supreme Court. I mean, some of the ridiculous decisions that come out of there from time to time, just gotta it's a big head scratcher. And clearly, I mean, the overwhelming landslide vote with which the National Defense Authorization Act sailed through Congress. Now I would have to. I don't really think people get there being quite so stupid either. I mean, I know these people aren't quite as brilliant as public perception may have it, because one thing that's good about running for office and actually rubbing elbows with all these people is, while you might know it intellectually, it kind of makes one really feel it at the core that, yep, they're just people. Like, duh. I mean, of course they're just people. But there's mystique attached to people in public office, especially when it gets all kind of hyped up by, frequent TV broadcasts, and you see them constantly beamed into your home during campaign season and all that. That somehow makes these people seem bigger than life, but they aren't. They are just life. But nonetheless, they wouldn't get where they were without having some clue as to what's in there. And so again, I'd say actually we probably have a government that's mainly composed of people who have wish to undermine the Constitution, who see it as an impediment to whatever agenda they wish to undertake. They see civil liberties as an impediment, and in a sense, for many people, apparently it not only is it but it really is a dead religion. And yeah, these guys are dead. However, it's not totally dead, because it lives on in the hearts of some people like ourselves. And I'm sort of seeing it that way now. It used to be that I kind of thought, well, okay, people are a little confused, and if you just explain to them, hey, look, this is what's going on, feel like, oh my, I can't believe people are destroying the Constitution, or taking away my basic individual rights. What I've come to the conclusion after being at this for so long is the vast majority of people really don't care about all that.
That's exactly why I think it's been an accumulative effect on, just because we got so many diversions. We also have an education system that basically mocks the core values of being an American. And I'm not a flag waver myself. I mean, and I'm not going to sit there and argue with people about the horrific deeds that are done in the creation of this country. But then again, I like to ask them, tell me what country did not have birth pains. Indicate to me what country did not have atrocities committed by one portion of the population against another. I don't know any. And I've studied pretty well. I've studied pretty much human history, far as back as a recording. I don't want to try to speculate with that which is not recorded. Just go with the recorded stuff of the past millennia or two, and we're not as bad as Europe. And yet all these intellectual eggheads in this country seem to want to point to Europe as being this great example of what we want to become. And I'm thinking, well, if you actually see this the way I see it, Europe is nothing more than a mass of cemeteries. I don't think there's a place in Europe you could walk through where horrific deeds are not committed, where basically there's blood shed, if you dig deep enough down, you're going to find bones of innocent people done in by horrific tyrants. I don't understand why they mythologize Europe and demonize our own.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that. I'm not a nationalist. There are things that are good about this country that have been historically good about this country, things that have not been historically good about this country or remain not good about this country. And I'm looking at, and I feel that anything that works in favor of individual liberty and against tyranny is good. To quote Ben Franklin, rebellion to I don't know if it's a perfect quote, but something to the effect of rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. I think it's fundamentally good to be against tyranny. Now, I don't know how to really prove that to somebody who somehow doesn't seem to have a problem with that. When you start pointing out people dying as a result of things, and effectively they're like, oh well, I guess but that's what we got to do. It's somehow excusable now. It's really hard to. I just really got, after the last election, I sat down, I thought about it, and I just looked and I go, okay. When I've had people, like at first I started out saying, well, 98% of the people voted for statism. And then I sat back and, and I had people argue with me and go, well, yeah, actually more than half the people didn't vote. Well, okay, 98% of the voters voted for statism. And I've had some people even celebrate saying, well, that means like the other 50-some% love liberty, that they're somehow, they're just rejecting the whole system. And I'm just like, really? You really think that? I'm more thinking that they didn't want to get away from watching Snooki reruns when it was time to go and vote. That's why I think the majority of the people who didn't vote where they were at. They were interested in something else, and it wasn't because of a deep-seated love for liberty, I think. Now, I have a few friends who didn't vote, and yeah, I believe them when they say they didn't vote because this is their way of protesting the system. Like, okay, I believe you because I know you, and I know that's where your heart is. But I really don't believe all those people who did vote are like them.
I don't either. Maybe I just had a thought when you talk about Snooki reruns. Maybe during the time of elections, maybe we should make it a national law that maybe they can go back to only 2 channels or something during the time of actual holding the elections. The actual day of voting. So these people can pry themselves out of their chairs, out of their sofas to actually go and vote. Because if it's going to be bad, at least I want more people involved in making it bad. You know what I mean? At least to be a true reflection.
Traffic on YouTube.
What'd you say?
They would just boost the traffic on YouTube.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because YouTube's available. Back 2 years after its inception, I guess there was already over 70 years of viewing available on YouTube at that point. Well, extrapolate that with 6 years further. Wow, you could watch YouTube morning, noon, and night for 4 generations, and still not watch because things are being added every day. So I don't know. Anyway, we're getting back to you have a website, don't you, where people can go and maybe print out petitions to help get Levin recalled?
Yeah, and a little more about that story. What happened? It's at committee to recall carllevin.com.
That's easy. Yeah, it's like I just put a picture of the man we're talking about. He's dressed in a nice suit, and behind him some books, and obviously they're trying to imply he probably read all these books and he's so scholarly. But anyway, I personally don't like Carl Levin. I just don't see him being this person. He does I guess he's our senator, But if you look at what his stands are, his viewpoints are, people like me, probably speaking maybe for you, people like us, he doesn't represent us at all. And so I'm supposed to pay this man's salary without flinching and just take what, because why? Why is this man? Why is this person so respected and esteemed? I don't see him do anything that I agree with ever. I don't think there's anything he's ever came out of his mouth I heard him publicly say that I agreed with. And him and Stabenow. I cannot.
Yeah, and I started complaining a lot, and never talking much about Levin, and all of a sudden talking about about the voters.
Mm-hmm.
And it really falls back on that. Not in this election, but obviously the reason he's in there now is because he won a previous election, and he won by a landslide. And it's not just sour grapes for myself, who happened to be running against him back then, but just a matter of he did win by a landslide. And that speaks volumes to the voters being responsible. Apparently, he represents them because they voted for him.
Yeah, I guess so. But there's no recourse.
He doesn't represent me.
There's no recourse. We have no recourse. And he has now done something that affects, because of his actions, his co-authoring of NDAA, it affects people way beyond the people who elected him. And I'm sitting there shaking my head. I'm like bewildered, angry. I'm just like dumbfounded. I guess that's the best expression. I'm dumbfounded that this man is probably going to seek election again another 6 years, 5 years. What's his term up? You sir?
Oh, no, it's going to be in 2 years.
2 years. Okay, that's right. He's already served. I mean, I forget. I mean, let's face
Every senator gets 6 years at a time.
So let's face it. Unless he dies in office or he some major scandal breaks where he's found with underage, that even. I mean, Clinton got a pass on that. So I mean, there's nothing that it shocks the sensibilities of Americans
He
anymore.
was underage.
Yeah, well, yeah. I guess that nowadays, there's nothing that's going to shock people. They just be tuned in, and they probably like him better because he actually did something they're wanting to do, but are afraid of getting away with and not getting away with. So, I mean, I just don't.
Yeah, the thing is, as far as the recall effort, I should bring up because that's kind of an interesting twist on its own, and it's another example of people kind of being, the sheeple kind of being led along. There is this myth out there that you cannot recall United States senators. And one thing at least I managed to hopefully accomplish, at least with some people, is make them aware of the fact that you can. It can legally. Now, unfortunately, can practically is an entirely different story because we have about, at this point, I'm looking at a week. No, a week and a half, because really by the 26th, if my partner Warren Raffshaw in Sutton Bay doesn't get a nice thick stack of petitions containing 500,000 signatures, then the effort this particular phase will die. Though he wants to jumpstart it again, I guess. He's talking January. I think spring would make more sense, but. Yeah, but we haven't really had a large response. I was hoping that at least, maybe just because he was a Democrat, a bunch of the Republicans would jump on board and want to recall him. But apparently that didn't pick up either. The only press coverage we got from a major paper was the Detroit News did write about the first hearing we had on May 1st for clarity review language. And initially the Wayne County Election Commission was trying to avoid even having a hearing. And I pushed the issue because that's their job under the law, is to have a clarity review hearing, or the petition language, whatever it says, is to be assumed to be suitable and clear, which means we can use it as a recall reason. Well, they finally capitulated. We had our meeting, and they said it wasn't clear. And they said a few things as to why they thought it wasn't clear. So we tweaked the language a little bit and approached them again through the same channels. And the second time around, they then refused to have a hearing. And when I finally got a letter specifically stating they would not have a hearing, then I followed Michigan law, which does say that after 20 days, if they do not have a hearing, that the language shall be presumed to be of acceptable clarity, and we can proceed, which we did. Unfortunately, we don't have a whole ton of signatures in yet, and so, like I said, unless something happens soon, this will kind of fade off, at least this particular phase of the effort. But one thing, at least, the civics lesson involved in talking to people about the process, and if you read through, we posted everything on the Committee to Recall Carl Levin webpage, explaining all the steps we went through. We have scans of all the documents, letters we submitted, letters they replied with. So we got a very transparent display on the fact that, yes, you can recall a United States senator. This is the process it's done by. The heading on our webpage states the law that explicitly says you can do this. If nothing else, at least making people a bit aware of this. Now, unfortunately, it is not acting as much of a deterrent. Carl Levin, by the way, did vote for the National Defense Authorization Act of 2013, which contained an amendment which on the surface appeared to nullify most of this garbage.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it had one clause in it. And that clause, I found out about the clause, was looking at Carl Levin's own comments about it. That clause says, except for by an act of Congress. And so, maybe that's not the exact wording, but except as allowed by Congress. And so, the law, otherwise says that Americans and American nationals cannot be detained in this manner without due process. But then it says unless authorized by Congress.
Well,
of course, the National Defense Authorization Act of 2012 was authorized.
They voted already for it, so I mean, it's already a done deal. I mean,
right.
So I mean, that was
Levin said on his own webpage about it, which is why he voted yes for it.
I mean, he
defends his vote on this one based upon the fact that he can still get around things and take away people's liberties. How brazen is that?
I don't know. I mean, there's so much anger here. I mean, and I'm trying to be professional to some degree, but I just that I just don't know what the Republic's going to happen. What's going to happen to the Republic with people like him, and with the people and the lack of response from the people out there at large. That's more telling. The politicians want to seek out the office so they can gain power. They enjoy that. And no offense, Matt, for you, because you did run for office. But face it, 90% of the people in politics go into it because they're basically, in my opinion, they're sociopaths. They want to seek out things to better their own life at the expense of others. They don't care about other people, but they know enough to go along and appeal to other people, to make them think that they're good people, to vote for them. So they know they're maniacal, almost, in my opinion. They're maniacal. I mean, and to his behavior, to me, I'd say is maniacal. I mean, there's no reason a scenario that he can come up with, in my opinion, that there's a need for what he helped co-author. There's no need for that. We have due process.
Sociopath is a really good word that you went there with that, because I'm sitting there picturing how when you watch things about like serial killers, and I'm not saying any of these people are serial killers, at least not with their own hands. But when you see things about serial killers, and like at home, I sometimes get a lot of leave one of the crime channels on and get a lot of these programs. One thing that strikes me is how, it's like these guys will be able to charm women, get their trust, and it's like often like for instance, people who kill women and stuff, they'll actually, the women will go home with them or go out with them and all this stuff, and I'm just like, gee, how come these guys can get the girls? I'm sitting there thinking, and me, who wouldn't kill them, has so much trouble. I mean, I'm not looking now, but back when I was looking, for friendly dates, of course. The point was, what is it with these guys? And part of it is a sociopath can actually pretend more than a person who actually is reasonably caring, but occasionally will be angry or show dissatisfaction or a certain lack of class. A sociopath will actually be able to fake it all the way through and just act like the perfect person,
right?
The perfectly attractive person, just pretending to be someone they're not to appeal to that other person. And that's how they lock people, and that's why they're the ones who are able to gain the trust of their victims, is because they do that. And actually, that is really a good comparison to what a politician does.
Yeah,
because it's like at some point, the whole thing of trying to get the vote starts turning into a thing where you're actually trying to just say what people want to hear instead of just saying the truth. And as soon as one crosses that line of just saying what they want to hear, then say the truth, then there's kind of a slippery slope to not really having any principles anymore, but still having some other motive which has nothing to do with the motives that one says one has.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's just this. If you ever talk to politicians, and you are if you're a diehard person, you're really boned up on a subject, and you question these people, and you can see they're being strained. They're supposed to be knowledgeable about this subject because it's something pertinent to their term of office, and you keep on pressing that issue, and basically they try to turn the table and make you look like you're a zealot that's just almost mockable, and they got this glibness to them, and it's like well, you saw that with Obama when he was still running, for the primary, during the primary against Hillary Clinton, and she actually said something that was trying to be defensive, like, hey, look, I'm not anti-gun. I used to shoot at my uncle's house or my grandfather's house. Well, he comes back like, yeah, she's just trying to sound like she was anti-Oakley. That glibness, hey, look, I'm going to mock you. I'm going to work for you, but I'm going to mock you. I'm going to mock you. You're supposed to be your potential employer, basically, and that's a kind of a form of an interview, but I'm going to mock you, and I'm going to still want your vote, though. because I'm charming. I'm gonna make you see how stupid you are for actually thinking this is serious. And Carl Levin's like that. All these guys are. If you are really questioning their motivations or the impact of what they're doing to you, they make you sound like you're a nut job. You know, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's just that's a sociopath. They're able to turn the tables on people. Like, oh God, I can mock you. I can mock you. How dare you mock me though? I wear a suit and I'm a politician. People like me. You know, I mean, they're. I don't even like dealing with them. I mean, I really don't. I really don't like dealing with politicians. I mean, to me, they come and shake your hand, and that's all people base their vote on. If they come to the factory and shake your hand, well, you did that 45 years ago, but I'll still vote for them. I just think that's insane. You don't look at his track record.
You gotta wonder what the heck people, why in the heck are they actually? I mean, the thinking behind this. When you think about it, what exactly, for instance, let's just go with the senator. There's only one thing a senator can do that the rest of us can't. That your vote, making a person a senator, what does it allow the senator to do? It allows the senator to vote on other matters that you can't vote on. So what really matters about your senator? His votes. Anything else a senator does, you can somehow, or someone else can somehow do some other way without ever getting elected to the U.S. Senate.
That's a good point.
What even constituent services? Other people can do services for people. But the senator, what can he do? He can vote yes or no on laws. He can, well, I guess other people can he can propose the laws. You can go, well, see, you can, write the laws. Well, no, other people can write the law, hand it to the senator, and then he can introduce it as his own. So even that, what the senator actually does that no one else does is vote.
Yeah, I mean, and that's all they do. And then another thing is too, and then you see the bills that they're passing. You know, this is a good point. This is a good point. This is a good point. Then they just so they can make friends, they pass stuff on they put tax stuff on those bills. They have nothing to do with the original intention of that bill becoming a law in the first place. But now you have to vote for it. They vote for it because, it's like, it's a huge portion of what I vote for. That rest stuff I don't really care about. And that stuff that's attached on there might be more significant than stuff they're actually voting on. I mean, it just, oh man. I mean, and then they act like they're so beset up on, they go on trying to find ways to make names for themselves by passing laws. I mean,
I remember when I was speaking with the Kalkaska Tea Party, and they really liked this one analogy I gave. I was just sitting there, and someone asked me, like, well, yeah, but what if there's a law and you to vote on a bill and it's really good, but there's someone puts a rider in there that's totally against everything you've been saying tonight. And I looked at them and I go, you know what? They serve really good food here. Yes, so by the way, the Whitetail Lounge in Kalkaska serves really good food. Okay, they serve really good food here. However, if somebody put arsenic in this fish dinner, then I would not eat it. And likewise, you can have a wonderful bill, but you put poison in it, I can't vote for it.
Right. That's a good way of looking at it. I mean, it's a very, very, straightforward way of looking at it. I'm not going to, like, with the biblical thing would be strain at a gnat and swallow a camel. I can't drink that. I can't swallow that gnat, but then he end up swallowing a camel in the process. I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. You're doing worse. It's common sense on politicians. And people involved in politics seem to, run away from common sense. I mean, it seems to be almost a prerequisite. So anyway,
if people want to download that petition, they can do that at the website. Now they can print it if they have a suitable printer, and of course, in the effort to make recall petitions real easy to do, politicians, of course, have required a long type of paper, 8.5 by 14, and very thin margins that most printers don't handle very well. Mm-hmm. So if it doesn't work out that way, you can always go to your county clerk and request a blank recall petition form, and then fill in the wording as it appears on the website.
Okay, so
copy it that way.
That's a good tip there, Scott. And anyway, also, if people want to find you on Facebook or other websites, would you want to give them out right now so that they can find you?
I left up my old campaign site, and so it's probably going to be the easiest way to link to my other activities sort of as a hub. And that is still the Boman12.org, which you can also get redirected to from ScottyBoman.org. No W. There's no W in my last name, Boman.
Yep.
That you can. I have actually links to, like, you click the Facebook icon, it goes right to my profile. You click the Twitter icon, it goes right to my Twitter profile, and so on. So I've left that up, and it'll probably be up for some time to come. And there's other things I've closed down. Like I had a meetup group. I'm closing that one down. But anything, the one thing I'm spending money on keeping up is my core website for a while, just out of pocket. It's really not that big a deal for me to do anyway. So that's one way you can kind of see the various things, that link to my various other activities. The Committee to Recall Carl Levin, again, it's actually myself and Warren Raffshaw, I'm sorry, I said his name wrong, Raffshaw, are both, working on this effort conjointly. He's in a totally different part of the state. He's up in the Traverse City area, and Sutton's Bay is actually the community, and that's the mailing address to send the petitions to. I wanted to make sure I put him in charge of more. I shouldn't say put him in charge of. In our discussions about who does what, I suggested that he probably should be doing more of the that end of things, because, for instance, there's also donation link and so on. Simply because I had a U.S. Senate campaign going at the time. And having a U.S. Senate campaign has all kinds of legalities of its own, and I didn't want there to be any confusion or sense of a commingling of finances or resources between those efforts. And so that's why, I kind of distance I don't have my address on there as the petition receiver, and I'm not the collector, and I'm not in charge of the treasury aspect of that committee.
Okay, so that's a good thing to have people know, because people would try to use that to object or to call you out on. So good thing you covered all that information. But anyway, we're going to wrap it up now, and thank you very much for your time. And hopefully we can get some people inspired to go out and collect some signatures. Like I said, it's I'm just like dumbfounded.
Educational thing is, even if let's say you only got another 1,000 signatures between now and a couple weeks from now. Well, then those are 1,000 people who may not have realized that that this senator did this objectionable thing, or that this objectionable thing even exists.
Right. That
there really is this law on the books that gives the president that much power.
It's shocking. Well, anyway, Scott, and like always, we talked to you before here on the show, through Flint Talk Radio, and it's always entertaining. It's also very educational, and that's one thing I always found about the libertarians out there. The major press wants to dismiss them, and the Tea Party members too, of being cranks, but they're better informed than the rest of the population, in my opinion. They know the grit on everything. They get down to the brass tacks, and you put in simple language and you demystify it, and we appreciate that. So talk to you soon, and thanks again.
And thanks for the privilege.
Yep.